Hey guys, just a quick note. As usual, I don't go out of my ways to try to spoil movies for you guys, but occasionally when you're discussing a movie, there's themes or topics you want to talk about that really can't be avoided in order to thoroughly explain a point. So on this episode, there's not really many spoilers. I do spoil one thing about the movie Omega Man, but the movie's 47 years old. However, I want to give you guys a quick spoiler warning about that. So once we get to that section, I kind of preface it a little bit in the episode. I think you can kind of see it coming, but if any of you are really not wanting to get this 47-year-old movie spoiled, you may want to skip over that section. Anyway, back to the show. My name is Eric Skwarczynski, and you're listening to episode number 007 of Gut Reactions. Music is an integral part of any horror film. For decades, horror soundtracks have made audiences' hair stand on end, whether alerting us to a dangerous killer, filling us with a sense of excitement and adventure, or simply scaring the pants off us. There are few things as potent as an effective score. Today I want to discuss the piece of music that few people talk about, but that everyone should. I hope you'll enjoy this brief discussion about underrated horror soundtracks. But before we dive into this topic, I want to quickly talk about what I've been watching this week. I've actually been able to catch up on a lot of movies over the past couple days. I had a 3-day weekend, and so I got to really dive into a couple of movies that were on the watch list. The first was Happy Death Day.
Happy Death Day.
Go, shorty.
Happy birthday.
It's your birthday. Go, shorty.
Happy birthday.
I'm totally having deja vu.
I have already lived through this day.
Whoever's killing you knows it's your birthday.
So I keep dying until I find out who's killing me. It's your turn to die.
Why are you doing this to me?
Happy Death Day. Rated PG-13.
So Vudu was having a sale on horror comedies, so I scooped up a couple movies. So I picked up Happy Death Day, I bought George Romero's Survival of the Dead. But Happy Death Day, I hadn't caught it when it came into theaters. I'd really wanted to see it, but lately my theater going has been pretty minimal since I'm a new dad, so I'm not able to go off too often. But Happy Death Day was a pretty fun movie. It's directed by Christopher Landon, who is the guy behind Disturbia. He's the writer behind that movie, which I'm a big fan of. He's the writer of Paranormal Activity, The Marked Ones. It was a really interesting movie going in. Obviously, it's been pitched as Groundhog Day meets Friday the 13th, and that's pretty accurate. Tonally, it's very similar to a Pitch Perfect style, like that kind of fun, cartoonish style, but it's got a little bit of heart to it. It's just a lot of fun. It was a really good movie. The biggest thing that stuck out to me was Jessica Roth in the leading role, playing the character of Tree. She is so funny and charming, and I think she has a big career ahead of her. I hope she does some more in the horror genre, but I'm excited to see whatever she does next. Fun fact, when I was looking at the movie, the last thing she had done before Happy Death Day was actually playing one of Emma Stone's friends in La La Land. I think she's the girl in the green dress.
Hey, girl.
Anyway, she's super talented. I haven't seen her in anything else, but she is really great, and I'm excited to see what she does next. I also caught Alfred Hitchcock's film Rope.
Rope turns murder into an art form. Professor Rupert Cadell is about to learn how dangerous impressionable students can be.
It's only a piece of rope, Philip, an ordinary household article. Why hide it? Murder is a crime for most men, but a privilege for the few.
If I were you, I'd go easy on the patty, dear.
Is it all over?
I'm afraid so, Rupert.
Oh, what a pity. In another moment, you might have been strangling each other instead of a chicken.
He's got it!
There's nothing like a good murder to whet one's appetite. Rope, based on a true story of murder.
So obviously Rope is starring James Stewart, and so basically the premise of the story is that these two guys kill a classmate just for the idea of perpetrating, the perfect crime. And so what they do is they kill a classmate, hide his body in the apartment, and then invite the guy's friends and family to a dinner party in order to challenge the perfection of the crime. And it is so interesting. It's set up kind of like a stage play. So there's only 10 takes in the movie. They range from about 7 to 10 minutes long, and then they're cut with these kind of hidden cuts throughout the movie. So, if you're really paying attention to it, you can see where Hitchcock would cut, and they'd reset the tracks for the cameras and move cables. But it basically plays as one take, aside from one or two kind of conventional cuts here and there. But really good, really tense. It's a very interesting movie. James Stewart's fantastic in it. I think he steals the show, but funnily enough, this is the one Alfred Hitchcock movie he did that he didn't like. He felt he was miscast in the role. But anyway, I thought he was great. The style is really great. It's up there as one of Hitchcock's best in my mind. I also caught up. I'm still watching through all of Stephen King's movies, The Never-Ending Journey. So what I just caught was Secret Window. It just dropped on Shudder.
Mort Rainey writes stories that scare you to death. But now...
Hello?
One story...
What's wrong?
...is coming back to haunt him.
I don't believe I know you.
That doesn't matter. I know you.
From the writer of Panic Room, Johnny Depp.
Leave me alone!
Secret Window. Rated PG-13. In theaters March 12th.
Starring Johnny Depp as a writer who is accused of plagiarism by a really strange man, and things really escalate from there. It's a really hard movie to talk about without giving anything away, but it was interesting. It played a little bit too much like a conventional thriller, but there's still some neat surprises here and there. I love the last shot of the movie and how macabre it is. I only have a few more films I want to talk about. I watched Salem's Lot starring Rob Lowe. So that's the 2003, I believe, miniseries.
I used to think nothing happened here. The truth is, everything happens here.
A dark secret.
When do we meet your partner?
In his own good time.
Awakened by a mysterious stranger.
I saw a plastic bag in the back seat.
Was it little boy size?
It was head sized.
This June.
I know your name!
What about the house?
It scares me even to this day.
An old friend is coming home.
Life is such a precious gift. I don't know how to stop it.
Based on Stephen King's best-selling novel.
Let me in, Daddy.
What's happening to this town?
Rob Lowe, Andre Brower, Rutger Hauer, and Donald Sutherland. Salem's Lot. Don't miss 2 nights of suspense, beginning Sunday, June 20th at 8.
I happen to like it here.
Only on TNT.
Really interesting movie. It's probably my favorite Stephen King miniseries that I've seen so far. I haven't seen the original. I hear that's really great. Rutger Hauer's in it. You have Donald Sutherland. Like I said, you have Rob Lowe. Great cast. It's got some genuinely scary moments, and it's got a lot of scale to it. I thought it was going to be one of my lower tier picks as far as my ranking of the series, but it ended up at number 10 out of the nearly 30 that I've seen so far. So it's a really solid adaptation. It's a lot of fun and definitely worth checking out. And lastly, as returning listeners know, I like to recommend a bloody good film each week. So that's a film I think my audience should either visit if they've never seen it or revisit. It's just something to point people back in the direction of some really good films. And this month, the choice was really simple, as I watched a little movie called Hungry Wives.
Hungry wives.
My evening is free.
On a diet of men.
Yeah, you're not bad in the sack, Mrs. Robinson.
Not bad yourself.
Everything women could want out of marriage, except the one thing they crave most. Joan, available. Shirley, dissolving her problems in drink. Marion, dabbling in witchcraft. They are all hungry wives with an appetite for diversion. Gambling with life and death.
son of a...
So Hungry Wives is a film by George Romero. It was done in between Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. So it's in that era of Martin. He's still working on that kind of low budget, really indie filmmaking. So this was before Dawn of the Dead, and he got into more the really big, sprawling kind of adventure movies we got to know him for. So Hungry Wives is also known as Season of the Witch and Jack's Wife, and the basic synopsis is a bored, unhappy suburban housewife gets mixed up in witchcraft and murder. And when you read that, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a very unique or fascinating movie, but oh man, it really is. It's a very art house movie in the sense that it's very heavy on visuals. It's very heavy on telling story with symbolism, with interesting editing techniques. It's very experimental and absolutely fascinating. There's one sequence in here that I think is as scary, if not scarier, than anything in Romero's other work. It's really interesting. You have to go into it with an open mind and understand that this is George Romero's attempt at telling very deep story about sexism, about misogyny. You know, it's made for $90,000, and I think what Romero did with that budget and with, you know, using local Pittsburgh actors the way he did with Night of the Living Dead, it's just a really good movie. Something I'll probably revisit because it's just so interesting the way it's crafted. It is a little long. It's about 2 hours and 10 minutes, but honestly, I didn't feel a second of that runtime. I just thought it was absolutely superb. If you are interested in watching it, it's on Amazon Prime right now, and so if you want to check out this week's Bloody Good Film, that's a good place to check it out for free. So now that we have all that out of the way, I want to talk about underrated horror soundtracks. And for the sake of time, because I could talk forever about this topic, I've just picked 5 this week that deserve way more attention than they get. The first one I want to talk about is 1971's The Omega Man, composed by Ron Grainer. Now, for those that don't know, Omega Man is essentially the 1971 version of the film I Am Legend. If you've seen I Am Legend, you know the basic story. Something's happened that's wiped out the whole world, this disease, and it's turned most of the population into, depending on the version you watch, these vampires or zombie-like creatures that attack the living, but they can only come out during the nighttime because they're killed by sunlight. So Omega Man stars Charlton Heston. Essentially, you spend your time watching him scavenge during the day and barricade himself in his house at night when these scary robed figures come out and taunt him and try to kill him. And so the music when he's out and about and relaxing and in his day is this very calm, lonely and sad music and somewhat peaceful, and there's moments where it's kind of, you're genuinely watching him enjoy something. But then it'll go to this intense urgency where either the sun's going down or, you know, someone's ambushing him outside his house. And the way it alternates from that peaceful to that kind of jolt to the excitement is really impactful. The opening of the movie is him driving through the city, kind of cruising in his car, and he starts playing on his 8-track A Summer Place by Max Steiner. As he's driving, he sees a shadow in the window, and it's one of the creatures, and so he just screeches the car to a halt. The music stops, and he spins out of the car with his gun and starts firing into the window. That transition really gets you into the mood of the movie. It's like, this guy's just trying to survive and make life as normal as possible, and then this situation just keeps showing up and ruining it, and it really gets you into it. My favorite piece of music where things just kind of go bananas is the track called Surprise Party, and that's when he pulls in his house and you just see all these vampire creatures come out and start attacking him. it's just such a lively musical piece. It's fun, but it's got this kind of action sense to it, and it's really exciting. I think the highlight of the Omega Man soundtrack, though, is really shown in the track called Hope Springs Eternal. Again, if you've seen I Am Legend, you kind of know the beat of the story, or if you're familiar with Matheson's novel. Essentially, through the death of our main character, a cure is brought to the remaining people that are at risk of infection. And so the end of Omega Man shows this very startling, obvious Jesus imagery of him with arms outstretched in a crucifix pose with blood leaking from his side. And the music really takes an interesting kind of cue there where it gives it this almost religious sounding, kind of beautiful and worshipful kind of tone. And the movie kind of goes out on that note, and it's really powerful. So up next on our list of underrated soundtracks is Jaws 2, composed by John Williams. After the success of the first Jaws movie, Universal obviously wanted to go quickly into a sequel, and they made a lot of wise decisions, honestly, with Jaws 2. I'm a big fan of the film, but one of the biggest and wisest things they did was they understood that what made that movie work, in large part, was John Williams' music. And so John Williams came back and revisited the score and did a terrific job. He intentionally gave it a bigger sense of adventure and kind of played up the sheer massive nature of the movie and of the shark and its killing spree. The movie is bigger. You have boat races. You have all this stuff, as opposed to the first movie, which is more isolated and calmer music. This movie really plays up the idea of all these teens going out and sailing and this shark just coming in and just destroying the summer. And it really works on that level. I think the music's bigger, the movie's bigger. It's not a better movie than the first one, but the music really works in escalating everything we saw in the first movie and just making it bigger and brighter and flashier. One of the things he did really well was he didn't just bring back the scary elements and play those up, he brings back the fun tunes from the first film, which is some of my favorite parts of the soundtrack. Every time that there's something going on at the beach or an activity or people out swimming, it just gives you this idea where, I want to go to the beach, before he brings in that tells you to get out of the water, get away from the beach. Regardless of what you think about the movie, the soundtrack shouldn't be missed. My next pick whisks us away from the ocean surrounding Amity Island and takes us to an old lake house on the shore of Crystal Lake. I'm talking, of course, about Friday the 13th, Part 7, composed by Fred Mullen. Now, Friday the 13th is the first movie, I think, that Harry Manfredini himself didn't compose. He had worked on all the other films in the Friday the 13th series. He's, of course, responsible for the soundtrack that's so familiar. But I think bringing in, no pun intended, new blood on the movie was very wise. I think the music was getting, although it was powerful music and it was very effective, I think it was predictable as the films were. And so when you had a movie that came in the series where they're introducing a girl with supernatural powers, they're shaking up the formula, they're changing up the mythology a little bit, having some new blood come in and compose the soundtrack was a really wise move. I love Friday the 13th Part 6, but it's a very different tone than Part 7. Part 6 was more self-aware and referential and funny and reflected the music of the series up to that point. Part 7 really sets up the tone that the movie has, which is it's more serious. The score really builds. You have a more mystical, emotional side for the character of Tina, who's a psychic with these powers. And then complementing that is this powerful choral music with these ominous drums beating and this percussion and this building and building. And it really gives you a sense of this impending showdown between, Tina, the unstoppable force, and Jason, the immovable object. It is gorgeous. It also isn't afraid to get sweet, which is really great. I mean, the storyline with Tina and her dad and the pressure she's under from the psychiatrist and from her mother and her desire to be accepted by friends. The movie has so many layers to it that you don't normally see in a Friday the 13th style slasher movie. If you haven't seen Part 7 and you've seen, a random entry in the series, I definitely think you should check it out. It is essentially Carrie versus Jason, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a really interesting and fun addition that has some really serious themes it deals with, and it's really good. Okay, we're down to our last two. I really want to talk about a movie that I love, Planet Terror. So Planet Terror was part of the double bill that was Grindhouse. And so Grindhouse was Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez teaming up to deliver a Grindhouse-style double feature of movies. So Quentin Tarantino did Death Proof with Kurt Russell, and it's about, a stuntman and these car chases, very 70s. And then Planet Terror is this kind of old school exploitation zombie horror movie with directed by Robert Rodriguez. And so Robert Rodriguez, in addition to directing, composed the score, and it really fits like a glove. I'm always interested when directors do their own music because those movies tend to, really mesh really well with the soundtrack because the director's putting in what he's been thinking about throughout the whole creative process. And so the music for Planet Terror especially is perfectly aligned with that dirty and grimy Grindhouse feel, but it also feels really sexy and dangerous. It's wonderful. It just punches you with these really drawn out notes and these really kind of like offbeat kind of tones, and it's just really cool. It makes kind of the bizarre zany nature of the movie really work, and it feels like a Grindhouse exploitation movie, even though it's really slick and modern. The music really anchors it to what the original concept was. As sexy and dangerous as it is, it also has a real sense of urgency and terror when it dips into the action horror side of things. The scene where Freddy Rodriguez's character goes to the hospital to save Cherry kicks in with some of that synthesizer kind of old school music that's really really cool, but then it also plays up some of those horror beats. It's really interesting. And obviously, you can't talk about Planet Terror without talking about that last scene where Cherry, it's the picture from the poster, gets her leg replaced with a machine gun, which is just bonkers and awesome and doesn't make any sense because how does she fire it when it's just attached to her leg and just resting there? But anyway, it's so cool, and the music that comes on echoes the music she's dancing to in the beginning of the movie, but it gives it more of this cool vibe to it, and it's so slick, and it complements the action. When she puts on those sunglasses and the music kicks in right after she's kicked all this butt, it is freaking awesome. I'm going to shift gears from a movie that's completely different than Planet Terror, but no less bloody. I want to talk about the gorgeous score from the gorgeous movie 2013's Evil Dead, composed by, I don't know how to say his name, Roque Banos or Rock Banos or Roque Banos. I don't know how you say it, but it is just a beautiful score. Much like Fede Alvarez's movie, Evil Dead, the score for the film does a lot to pay homage to the original movie, but builds on it in very interesting ways. So you have hints of the piano from Evil Dead. You have the noise that the demons make when they're whooshing through the woods, and you're going to find whoever you're going to possess. You have those really striking violin noises and these emotional beats. It's really interesting. And you know, the music has a way of building just like the movie does. You're peaceful, quiet, building, and then it just breaks and shatters and explodes all over the place. You have these really strong music beats that accent what the demons are screaming, what the people are screaming about, the visceral gore that's happening on screen. The track "You're All Going to Die Tonight," when she turns and says that, and you see the force or whatever you want to call it flying toward her, and it's building. They're all in the cabin, and then she just erupts. The music is amazing.
Mia?
Mia? What are you doing?
Mia, put the gun down. Put the gun down, please. Mia! Put the gun down!
You are all going to die tonight.
The movie's filled with those. The music cues are great. Some great jump scares that are created through music. Great emotional moments are created, something that was not there in the original film, but in Fede Alvarez's version, it's a very emotional movie. We're really investing in Mia in a very different way than we invested in Ash. Ash is cool and fun and lovable, but Mia has this emotional core with her brother, talking about her mom. That's super interesting. And that music really comes to a head, and those themes really come to a head in the last track in the movie, which is Come Back to Me, which is, I won't spoil what's going on in the movie, but basically something's happening where, you know, a main character is out of the scene and someone's trying to bring them back, and the music just rises and rises and rises with this kind of epic score, and it's so powerful and emotional, even though there's blood everywhere and gore, and you know, it's literally, by the end of the movie, it's raining blood. You're so drawn in emotionally that you forget all of that circumstantial stuff. It's emotionally resonant moments like that that really set Freddy's Evil Dead apart and puts it kind of a step above a lot of movies within the horror genre. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Gut Reactions. If you want to take the conversation further, be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and consider joining our closed Facebook discussion group called Gut Reactions, where we have more in-depth conversation about everything regarding the horror genre. If you haven't already, be sure to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. That helps us tremendously with our rankings within the podcast app. If you don't have an Apple device, you can always connect with us through Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or any podcast app of your choice. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, this is Eric Skwarczynski of Gut Reactions.